Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome back into Vandy247 Live. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, here on the Believe Podcast Network, our new distribution platform. We should be going live there within the next 2-3 days. So going to have to start saying on the Believe Podcast Network. This is another beautiful Monday here in Nashville. We've got a big Vanderbilt win to talk about, their fourth top 15 win of the season over number 14 Missouri inside Memorial Gym. We're going to be joined by Tim Thompson here in just a second to recap that game. Also look ahead to tomorrow night's late tip-off, 9 o'clock against Arkansas. Before we do all that, though, I want to tell you about the Wash House. They present our basketball coverage. If you're dreading laundry day, is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Well, let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 locations in Nashville. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry. Ready to be put away? Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. We'll talk a little baseball after our conversation with Tim. Obviously, a tough weekend for the Vandy boys out in Los Angeles, losing 2 out of 3. Lost to UConn and USC. Did beat UCLA on Friday night, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. But today we're talking mostly basketball, and we're going to do that with Tim Thompson, the radio color analyst on the Vanderbilt Radio Network. Tim, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm a lot better now that we got that win over Missouri. There was a stretch there where I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to get it done, but it was, boy, you talk about an exciting game and some Memorial magic. Boy, it was crazy in there on Saturday.
It really was. And I want to go back to even before the Texas A&M game, what you just talked about. There were some nervous Vandy fans, nervous Vandy alums. What's going to happen here down the stretch? Well, it turns out Vandy goes on the road, beats Texas A&M. And really, Tim, just before that home win against Ole Miss obviously was huge, but had a tough stretch. You wondered how this team was going to respond. For them to stay in the fight and keep going, whether it's getting back out there and practice, whatever it is, that they never wavered. And to go on the road in College Station, get that win, and then return home against Missouri. This is a tournament team, Tim, and you can't say enough about the job Mark Byington and this staff have done. Just like I said, to get this team back up off the mat after such a brutal stretch that they had.
Yeah, Billy, you're right. I mean, you look at that stretch that we had. We played Auburn, the number 1 ranked team in the country, at home, and we go on the road to Tennessee. And I thought we played one of our best halves, that first half, against Tennessee. And then, the second half, we got some tough whistles, and we ended up getting beat. And then, the Kentucky game, we played okay in the first half, but in the second half, we just couldn't make shots, and, they were making everything. And so that stretch, I don't care who you are, Auburn, number 1 team at home, Tennessee on the road, Kentucky on the road, that's just a tough stretch. But to your point, I just think Coach Byington's done an unbelievable job with the roster, with this team, and keeping them focused. It's funny because you go to Texas A&M, and that's a tough place to play. And Buzz Williams, they try to just ugly up the game and make it really physical and that kind of thing. And I thought we did a great job of playing through that physicality and and making plays down the stretch. I thought Tyler Tanner, MJ Collins did a great job of, penetrating, getting the basketball to nickel, those kind of things. But I mean, I've watched a lot of SEC basketball, and what this team has done. I mean, if Coach Byington isn't considered strongly for Coach of the Year in the SEC, then there's just something wrong. And then you come home after that win and you think, okay, we're playing a really tough Missouri team. And I've always thought they were good. They go to, they go on the road, and I think they've won 3 or 4 games on the road. They beat Florida at Florida, and they come in there and, in here, and they're very athletic. They shoot the ball well. The Caleb Grill kid is really playing well. And, do you have a letdown after that A&M game? And I was really impressed with, the way that the team responded. And, you look at that whole sequence, and I mean, I'm sure you want to talk about that, but, you get that thing into overtime. And then I thought we really played well in overtime to win that thing.
Absolutely. And, that Missouri team, that was a bunch of men, Tim, that they had some older guys. You mentioned Caleb Grill. Josh Gray could be a down low, but he really didn't do a ton against Vanderbilt. Mark Mitchell, who was a matchup nightmare against Vanderbilt in the first matchup, thought McLaughlin did a solid job on him. He's a really good player. He got his own. I mean, 19 points. But that's a game, Tim, where if you don't have the production from AJ Hoggard, you probably don't win that game. And that, to me, that was a key performance there. You had 23 from Magnon. You can't forget about that either.
Yeah.
But Tim, I don't think we've seen Hoggard play, from beginning to end in a game like that all season.
Well, really the last time, and we were the very first game of the season at LSU, and he kind of took the game over with about 6 or 7 minutes left in that game. He pretty much took the game over. And that's the kind of AJ Hoggard that kind of everyone is expecting. And, he had a tough night against Texas A&M, but, to Coach Byington's point, he was, he didn't play a lot. He played like 4 minutes in the second half, but he was over on the bench, just encouraging other players and cheering for other players. And, it was about the team. And, with the way that Missouri plays, they are just really physical defensively, coming off high ball screens. And I told Kevin Ingram that I thought AJ Hoggard was the guy, the big, strong kind of point guard that, can split double teams and create mismatches. And I just thought he played off the charts. He had 21 points. He had 6 assists. He only had 3 turnovers. But then he was 8 for 8 from the free throw line. I mean, he was amazing from the free throw line. And that's really what won us the game down the stretch. But I thought there was a stretch at the end of the game and in the overtime when Missouri had Jacob Cruz, and Coach Byington, and I don't know if this was planned, but they used Cruz's man to set the high ball screen for AJ Hoggard. And they switched everything. If you watch the game, they switched everything. So all of a sudden now you've got AJ Hoggard on a 6'7", Jacob Cruz, who's not really athletic. And what they did is they spread the floor for him, and then he just broke him down off the dribble. And I thought that was really a big key in the overtime. And what I thought AJ did a great job of is he didn't try to over penetrate. He got down the middle of the lane, and if he didn't have it, then he looked to spray the ball to the perimeter. And the very last one in regulation, when I'll kind of take you through it and take the fans through it, because there was 8 seconds left in the game, and we get the ball, have to go full court, and we're down 3. And I really thought Missouri was going to foul us. And I watched the replay probably 3 or 4 times when I got home yesterday. And if you watch, Caleb Grill was trying to foul AJ Hoggard. And what happened was you had Tyler Nickel down on the baseline. You had Jason Edwards on the wing. And when AJ Hoggard broke the double team at the top of the circle, Caleb Grill saw Edwards coming to the top of the circle. And instead of really trying to foul Hogard, he sees Edwards coming to the top of the circle, and in his mind, which is correct, hey, I don't want to let him shoot a three, because Hogard was inside the 3-point line, and it was almost like the Missouri team kind of froze a little bit, because he was wide open, and I think there were a couple guys thought, okay, he's just going to take it and score and then try to foul again. Well, he stops right at the free throw line, inside the free throw line. And the guy, I believe it was Trent Pierce, was on the baseline guarding Nickel at the baseline. And when AJ got the ball into the middle of the lane, when I was watching the replay, you could see that he turned his head from Nickel to AJ Hogard. And right when he turned his head, that's when Nickel went from the baseline over above the wing. And then AJ saw him, and bang, he sprayed it out right away. And the Pierce kid, all of a sudden, he realized, oh no, I'm in deep trouble right here because I lost him. And it was a perfect pass. And I always talk about delivering passes to a shooter in what I call the shooting basket. And man, it hit Tyler Nickel like right there where he could just catch and shoot. And the roof came off of that place when he hit it. And I just thought it was something that I really thought we were going to get fouled. And Dennis Gates probably looked back on it and probably would say, yeah, I wish I'd have fouled him a little bit further out. But it got us into overtime. And then, I just thought we played great in the overtime. We scored the first basket. And then you look at Chris Magnon, and he was a difference maker in everything, rebounding, defense. He was 7 for 8 from the free throw line. He was 8 for 13 from the field. He was a guy that just created some mismatches, that really helped us. And I'm just so excited for this team, because I thought we were in after the A&M game. Because I think there's going to be a 7-win team in the SEC that's going to get in. It's not going to be us, though.
Yeah.
And, this win to put us at 8-8, we won, 3 games in a row on top 25 teams. I just can't see how, I just think that we're in a situation where we're a lock now. And, you can play loose and free. And, I'm just really excited for the fans. I mean, all of us have been waiting for this, but I don't think anyone anticipated that Coach Byington, his first year, was going to be, in the big dance. But that was one of their goals. And, it's just so gratifying to see that.
Absolutely. And one more thing on the Missouri game, you get into overtime, Tim. I told somebody up in the booth, they're not losing this game. Missouri at that point, you as a player, Tim, you get into overtime when you've got the game. I mean, you've got the game being up 4. I think it was 23 seconds left, and we can't forget about it. Jason Edwards' shot either, real over Caleb Grill there. And he just has a knack for hitting those shots. And then, of course, his shot in overtime, which was a dagger. That's a layup. That in rhythm shot for him. That's a layup for him. But Tim, I'd have to imagine the team was confident, and you were confident there on the side that overtime would probably go well for them, just considering how they got it to overtime.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and it's a mentality as a player when you feel like you got the game won, and then all of a sudden something like that happens to you. It's like it just when he hit that shot, when Nickel hit that shot. When I was watching replays yesterday, I was looking at the Mizzou players when he hit it. And it was just like somebody took a pin and just popped the balloon. And, they went back they all kind of just hung their head walking back to the bench. Of course, the Vanderbilt team is just off the charts excited. And then Chris Magnon, I think, off the top of my head, I can't remember everything, but I think that back cut that he had on the baseline was the first score in overtime.
Yep.
And, again, that's the one thing that kid does. I've never seen a kid that cuts harder without the ball. I mean, he cut so hard, and it was I think I'm trying to think who delivered the pass. It may have been McLaughlin or Carey, but he cuts off that baseline, and he's so athletic and explosive. Once he gets by you, I mean, you're going to have to foul him, or he's gonna dunk it. And but that kind of started everything off right. In the overtime, and then we did great. I mean, I think we were 7 of 9, from the free throw line, down the stretch, and you had a kid like Tyler Tanner, freshman kid, go up to the line and knock down free throws and do that kind of stuff. So, it was just a great, just a great team win. And, you sit there and you start thinking about, gosh, we're going to be in the NCAA tournament, which, it's been 8 years, I think, something like that.
Yeah. 2017. It's crazy. Yeah. But Tim, you mentioned Chris Mugnone. The way he's come up big, not only in the A&M game, but really the last, it feels like, month for this team. Even in games they've lost, he's been really big. Can you remember a player quite like him at Vanderbilt? Obviously not in the recent history, at least I can't. I think of a guy maybe like Jeffrey Taylor, but even Jeff Taylor was more of a scorer, but just athletically, the way he impacts a game, I think of Jeff Taylor. But Chris Mugnone, just his energy and his ability to change the momentum in a game so quickly, especially on the defensive end, I can't remember a player quite like him. And Vanderbilt typically, Tim, maybe doesn't have that guy that the other team. I already know opponents cannot stand Chris Mugnone, especially opponents' fans. But when you've got a guy on your team like that, it makes such a difference. Can you remember a guy quite like him at Vandy?
Well, you really make a great point that probably Jeff Taylor, because Jeff Taylor, not only was he a really good scorer, but he was a really good defender. I mean, I remember Coach Stallings would put him on, he could guard probably really 4 positions, 1 through 4. He was that good of an athlete. And that's where Chris comes in too. He's one of those guys that he's big and strong, and he could probably guard a 4 if he had to, but he can guard 1 through 3 like that. I mean, and the thing that he does is he gets up under you and is really, really physical. And that's one of the things that Coach Byington, I think, had to say to him is like, hey, you got to stop getting, fouls that really don't make a difference. And, he and MJ Collins too, that's the other guy that I thought played well, against Missouri, because, Grill started out really, really hot. He didn't do great in the second half, but I thought those two guys, they can be interchangeable from a defensive standpoint. But when Chris Mugnone scores 23 points and has 11 rebounds, you're going to win a bunch of basketball games if you're the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Yep, absolutely. Tim, one more on this next game here, Arkansas, tomorrow night at 9:00, and I think some fans are ready to be done with that tip-off time. But quick turnaround, and look, you said it. This game is no longer a must-win. Now, this is definitely a must-win for Arkansas. So that makes it really tough on Vanderbilt. And who knows, Arkansas? Who knows how the committee is going to look at Arkansas here in a couple of weeks? But either way, they're coming off a loss to South Carolina, who before that game was 1-15, I think, in the SEC. This is going to be tough. This might be. Now, look, we've said that a lot. We said Missouri was going to be tough for Vanderbilt. We said a lot of the other home games. Well, they've beaten 4 top 15 teams at home. This one is a game you should win. I think you're telling yourself that, but Tim, it's going to be tough with Calipari and these guys being absolutely desperate. Maybe the most desperate team in the SEC.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, Billy, that, especially the way they played at South Carolina. I was keeping up with their game like before our game started, and I was looking at their stats, and with 18, 19 minutes, maybe, into the second half, they were 5 for 35 from the field and 0 for 15 from a 3-point line. So, the score of that game, if you looked at it at the end, did not indicate how badly Arkansas got beat. And I think, to your point, they're going to be really, really desperate, because if they lose this game, they could be in some serious trouble, because the South Carolina, in the committee's mind, that was a really bad loss. That was a bad loss for Arkansas. Now, my understanding is the Thero kid from Arkansas is out. He won't play. And I've always thought that he was one of their better players. So that's advantage Vanderbilt. But again, they've got a team that's a bunch of young kids, and they were playing really, really good until they went down to Columbia. But once again, I think it's one of those deals where we have to come down off of our high from Missouri, the overtime, all that kind of stuff. We've got to refocus and say, this is a game that we're now playing for seeding. And if you win against Arkansas and you happen to win against Georgia, now you get off, in my opinion, you would get off that 8-9 seeding line. You would move into that 7 seed probably. If you're in that 8-9 and because you studied it, you win that 8-9 game, you're playing the number one ranked team or number one team in the region. So it would be good for us to be able to win both games, get to that 7 line, and then you have an opportunity to maybe get to this, the Sweet 16 if you're playing good. But Arkansas, excellent team. Calipari, he's been here in the gym before with Kentucky. He understands the whole thing. So my only concern is just the start time at 9 o'clock on a central time. That I don't know who makes that decision, but to me, that is, in my opinion, not really fair to the athletes when you're starting a game at 9 o'clock Central Time. And I'm sure it's probably, some sort of TV deal, but I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of fans that'll still show up, because now it's not like it has been. Fans are coming into that gym and they're expecting to win. They think we can win, and the team thinks we can win. The coaches think we can win. And I will say this. We talk about Coach Byington, but his staff, the rest of those coaches on the staff, have done a magnificent job of scouting, preparing, making sure that we're playing one game at a time. And I'm just so impressed with just everything that Coach Byington and the staff has done to put these kids in a situation where they're going to get to go play in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you watch this, the assistants on the bench. I mean, they don't miss a beat. I mean, they are always in Byington's ear, and they're just as involved with the guys, especially on the defensive side when they're close to to their bench inside Memorial. So there, I can't agree with you more on that. We've got a few questions, Tim, I want to rumble through before we let you go. Okay. Jason asking about if Ole Miss and Vandy both end with a 9-9 SEC record, who gets the first round bye in the SEC tournament? And there's a lot of scenarios here. And both teams have 2 more games to play. Vanderbilt's at 8-8 right now. Ole Miss is at 9-7. I don't know if you've looked at any of those seed scenarios for the SEC tournament, Tim, but Vanderbilt can still get, they're not locked into that Wednesday spot. They could still play on Thursday.
You're correct. And bear with me just one second, because we're head to head. It's us.
Yeah.
Because, we have the win. But I think what determines that is when, if it's tied, it goes head to head first. And then if you look at, how they've done against, the top ranked teams as it comes down. I think this is my understanding. So, we lost against Auburn, we lost against Florida, Alabama. So those first 3 teams, we've lost, but we split with Tennessee. We've beaten Missouri. I don't know. I'd have to look at Ole Miss's schedule to see what they did against the top 3 teams.
Ole Miss did beat Alabama.
Okay, Ole Miss beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I remember that game. So, but if it's tied, then the main tiebreaker is us.
Right.
I mean, it'll be us because we beat them head to head.
Yeah. So Vanderbilt, to answer that, Jason, would have the first round bye. Before Ole Miss, though, you've got some other team. Mississippi State is another team Vanderbilt's competing with for a seed in the SEC tournament, and even A&M. If A&M, A&M's now lost 3 in a row. A&M, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vandy are all jostling to stay out of that Wednesday slot in the SEC tournament right now.
Well, if you look at Ole Miss's schedule, okay, they play Tennessee at home and then at Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty tough schedule right there. And I mean, they could easily be 9-9. You look at Mississippi State's schedule, and they have Texas at home, and they play at Arkansas, and they're 8-8 with us. But again, if it's tied, they win because they beat us.
Right.
I think second game of the season at our place, so they would get the tiebreaker there.
Yeah, so Mississippi State, as opposed to Ole Miss, might even be the team to watch more if you're a Vanderbilt fan here down the stretch. Jake asks, "Is this a Sweet 16 team, Tim? In your mind, do you think? What do you think?"
I hate to say no, because if you get the right draw, and we've all talked about this, is if you get the right draw in the tournament, you can get to the Sweet 16. Like I said earlier, you don't really want to be on that 8-9 line, because then you're going to have to play through the number 1 seed. If you could get, you go to 10 or get to 7, now all of a sudden you've got the ability to play lower ranked teams and potentially get to the Sweet 16. And to answer his question, yes, we could be a Sweet 16 team if we get the right draw.
Well, like right now, for example, Jerry Palm, his latest bracketology at CBS Sports has Vandy as an 8 seed playing 9 seed Gonzaga. If they win that, they'd be playing number 1 seed Houston. Out of Tennessee, Auburn, and Duke, Houston's probably the 1 seed you'd like to play. So those are scenarios that you got to look at if you're a Vanderbilt fan.
Yeah.
One more here, Justin. Can Vandy get up to a 6 seed in the dance with wins against Arkansas, Georgia, and 2 wins in the SEC tournament? I've been wondering the same thing, Tim. I said 7, but you never know what happens around you and the SEC with other teams. But it is interesting to wonder what the seed ceiling of this team could be.
Well, and again, we won 3 in a row, and if you say that we're going to win another, that's 7 games in a row in the SEC that you would win if you got to what we're talking about right here. And again, if you're playing the right teams, you might be able to get to a seed or a 6 seed if other teams around you get beat early in the tournament, all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if they can get to a 6 seed. That's going to be really, really tough. They would really have to go on a stretch where they win against some high quality teams in the SEC. But I'm hoping to try to get to 7 right now. The 7.
Yeah. Well, man, it like you said, it feels really good to be even talking about stuff like this, and on Selection Sunday, be able to wake up and see Vanderbilt in the NCAA tournament. I know there's 2 games to play, but you also got the SEC tournament, which is going to be a blast. Tim, really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully you get your coffee in tomorrow night, and then get some sleep in on Wednesday before the trip to Athens. But really appreciate you taking the time today.
I won't need my coffee. I'm going to need a nap before the game, and then I'll be okay as long as I can get my nap before the game.
I love it. Appreciate it, Tim.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, that's Tim Thompson, color analyst there on the Vanderbilt Radio Network with Kevin Ingram. You can hear them on 102.5 The Game, locally also 94.9 The Fan. Love love our conversations with Tim Thompson as well as Kevin Ingram. And throughout this week, we're going to be talking basketball bracketology big time. Tomorrow, we've got our Anchor Impact episode with the Real Deal podcast. We'll have volleyball head coach Anders Nelson on the show tomorrow. But Wednesday and Thursday, we'll be talking bracketology for really both those days. We'll recap the Arkansas game, and then we'll look ahead to the Georgia game in Athens. And then next week, we're talking SEC tournament. We will be there with our full coverage. So Vanderbilt and Arkansas tomorrow night, 9 o'clock on the SEC Network, late night tip at Memorial. So get your coffee in, get a nap in, like Tim Thompson said, and get ready for that one. Blackout is what they're saying there inside Memorial Gym. Also, some baseball notes. Tough weekend for the Vandy boys as they go to Los Angeles, and they did beat UCLA on Friday night, which ironically, you look at the weekend, you would think would be the toughest matchup of the three, but they end up really taking control of that entire game, 8-3 over the Bruins. And then the next 2 days, they proceed to put up just 3 runs on the board. They didn't pitch terribly, but they didn't do anything on offense. Against USC on Saturday, lost 3-1. Just the approach at the plate. Again, I didn't get to watch a ton of it with my focus on basketball, but not the best weekend for Vanderbilt. And look, it's still early, but then you lose to a UConn team that was 1-7 going into yesterday. That's a bad loss. That's a bad loss. Now, look, UConn could be a team that turns it around, but they were 1-7. You lose 6-2. Cody Bowker was not at his best. Obviously, McIlvain, he wasn't awful on Saturday, but the story was the lack of offense. You only score 11 runs over the weekend after a weekend where you score, what was it, 35 runs over the weekend. Against St. Mary's. I mean, or maybe it was 26. Either way, they put up a lot of runs a couple of weekends ago. This past weekend, only 11. And that is a concern. But they'll come back tomorrow at 4:30 at home against Evansville. So that is what they've got. And then Wednesday against St. Bonaventure. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday series against Xavier, a familiar Xavier foe who knocked Vanderbilt out of the NCAA tournament a couple of years back. So Vanderbilt's got to certainly figure some things out on the offensive end as they lose 2 out of 3 out in Los Angeles. Also, before we wrap it up, some football news. Vanderbilt head coach Clark Lee has handed off his defensive coordinator role and play calling duties to Steve Gregory. Of course, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, he was the associate defensive coordinator before joining not joining, but before being named the defensive coordinator. Spring practice starts tomorrow. You would assume Clark Lee wants to get this out there and get this out into the public and get things going. But Coach Lee's time as defensive coordinator is over. It only lasted 1 year. And Steve Gregory is your guy at defensive coordinator. And linebackers coach Nick Lazinski also added the title of co-defensive coordinator. So co-defensive coordinator for Nick Lazinski. And wanted to get those 2 notes out there. Spring practice starts tomorrow, and Joey and I will be there reporting. Oh, excuse me there for the mic. Joey and I will be there reporting live and giving you live updates, and looking forward to that. So spring practice tomorrow, Vanderbilt and Arkansas late tomorrow night. You got baseball tomorrow, and then baseball the rest of the week and the weekend. A lot of action going on West End, and we're talking all about it. We'll have the Real Deal podcast tomorrow with Anchor Impact. That'll do it for another episode of Vandy 247 Live. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, comment, do whatever you can to help us out. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again soon with more episodes of the Vandy 24